All right, we're live. Fairway to Heaven, Waste Management, Phoenix Open. I got my main man, Chris Murphy, joining me today. Fairway to Heaven starts in 30 seconds. And a very good evening, everybody. Welcome to Fairway to Heaven right here on the DSM Media Network. We're live, as always, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Like, share, retweet, follow on all social media platforms. But if you want to get interactive with the show, the best place to do that is on the DSM Media YouTube page. And make sure you hit that like, that subscribe button, turn notifications on over there. Best place to drop your comments, questions, thoughts as we get set this week for the unofficial kickoff to the golf season, in my opinion. The Waste Management Phoenix Open, coincidentally, right down the road from where my Philadelphia Eagles might be playing in a little football game this weekend. This is the best of both worlds. I even saw Justin Thomas interviewing Jalen Hurts at media night last night. So there's a lot of football and my morning show Trend in the AM connecting with Fairway to Heaven here tonight. So I'm your host, Phil Stiefel. We got my man Chris Murphy sitting in here next to me from Action Network at CS_Murph. Chris, thank you for joining me today. I really greatly appreciate your time.
Yeah, man, happy to do it. Looking forward to it. Glad to give you a full distraction from that little football game you got coming up this weekend. Yeah, you're right. It's the kickoff of the golf season too. It's a fantastic sports weekend, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I did I phrase it right? It's the unofficial kickoff to golf because like the guys like me and you, the people that are in this all year long, because golf's like a 46-week sport.
Yeah.
All year long, every week. But the novices, the casuals, they wait till football season's over, and this is that week where they start to kind of get back into it. And hell, I mean, if you're going to get back into golf, I mean, this is the tournament, and this year's field at this tournament. I mean, damn, you couldn't pick a better week to kick off the unofficial start to the season.
Yeah, absolutely. You finally get rid of the multiple courses and the pro-ams and watching, Bill Murray and Josh Allen hit golf shots and all that stuff. It's part of it, but it is definitely a good week to be ready. And like you said, this is an absolutely elite field at an event that's been fun, even when some of the top names didn't typically show up. So it's going to be ramped up a whole nother level this year.
Are you on par with most of us that just can't stand the course rotations? And I mean, I know last week with the weather, there's not much you could do about it as a handicapper or fantasy guy. But
Right.
I just feel like last week and Torrey Pines a few weeks back, those courses are so legendary that I feel like it's a disservice to the course itself to have it involved in a tournament that's part of a rotation. And like Pebble Beach, like my uncle got to play there a few years ago, and he said it was like such an honor to walk that course and play that course. And then you see it in a rotation. It's kind of frustrating to me, not just as a handicapper or whatever, but it's just a fan of the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a shame that the times that we see those courses are, once every handful or more years that a U.S. Open graces their presence down there at Pebble Beach or at Torrey Pines for that matter. But yeah, it's unfortunate, especially for Pebble. In my opinion, that tournament has just gotten a terrible spot on the schedule. It's a terrible event in terms of the professionals playing in it, the long rounds, all of it is, it just doesn't attract the field. And so you get a guy like Jordan Spieth who's tied to AT&T and the sponsor, and that's, ultimately the reason he's there. But you just can't draw enough other names to really do justice to the three courses really that they're playing there that are just absolutely phenomenal. And great to see on TV and fun to watch, but it's just tough. Like you said, it's a disservice to those legendary tracks. And unfortunately, we don't see bigger fields playing there each year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to take, and I don't even want to take anything. You said those courses, the other courses, Monterey and Spyglass, they're not bad courses either. You know what I mean? And it's just I think the course rotation, as a whole, it's kind of frustrating. You kind of have to with the pro-ams involved and all the players, but
Right.
put more of those things in November and December when nobody really cares. Don't put it at this point of the year. At least that's my opinion. I don't even.
Right.
I think you said something. You tweeted it out this weekend. About the people getting upset about the withdrawals and the rain delays, and there's nothing you could do about that. It's the
Right.
other stuff that you can control.
Right.
All right, so we're at TPC Scottsdale down in Arizona, Waste Management Phoenix Open. Like you said, elite of elite. I mean, this is always draws an elite crowd or elite field, but this year it's better than I can ever imagine. 18 of the top 20, 23 of the top 25. I mean, every single top name golfer is here. And, you got the crowds that are going to be obviously, crazy and roaring like it always does. Do you think the crowds are starting to get bigger and bigger as the years go on, drawing more and more people to this event? Or is it strictly that this is the first big boost of money this year, and that's where these extra, I mean, it's always draws a big crowd, but 18 of the top 20, that's a real extreme.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely the elevated event. I think there are probably some players that prefer not to have the atmosphere. I think, and he's on live now, but Bubba Watson has talked about how that's just not his thing to be around that many people and to have that atmosphere on 16. And I think the elevated event is, it's going to get everybody in there. I don't know where Zalatoris is. I haven't heard why he's not here. And actually, it seems like it would be a course that he would love. But anyway, it's got everybody else. Everyone else is here, and I think it definitely is what they intended when they elevated these purses and elevated these events to bring everybody together. And this is a great place. They, I guess, technically kicked it off at the Tournament of Champions, but this is really the start of it. And it's going to be a fun next really 5 weeks. We've got a couple back-to-back here, the Honda in between, and then you get into the players and things like that. So golf season ramps up in a hurry, and we're going to see all the big names in a flurry of events.
Yep. So, I mean, this is a great golf course too. The TPC Scottsdale. Take out of the equation the money, the crowds, and everything else. It's a great golf course that really tests just your overall skills, your ball striking, your tee to green, your scrambling more so maybe because of the crowds and the energy feel around it. When you're looking at this event, you take the players out of the equation. What are you looking for in golfers to bet, to put your DFS lineups together? What is like the number 1 and 2 things that you're looking at for golfers this week?
Yeah, well, 1 and 2 is ball striking. You will not fake your way around this course. If you don't have your game ball striking, more so even than tee to green, I think, like you said, you need a little bit of scrambling and some around the green game. But really, they hit greens at a pretty high clip. It's more about, you've got to be dialed in off the tee and on approach because it's going to be firm and it's going to be fast. And you just can't fake it. You're going to have it for 4 rounds. And so I will lean on guys that I know, will bring a ball striking game with them. And you've got to weed some guys out in a field like this, and it's really hard to do. But some of the guys that haven't shown that they've got their form ball striking to start the year are the first ones that I can kind of cross off my list and focus on the guys that seem to have it dialed in early and often.
When you're focusing in so much on a stat or a skill set like ball striking, and you just said it perfectly there, the guys that have been hitting the ball recently really well. Like if a course is a putting course or a driving distance course, maybe you stretch out your research to 50 rounds or 36 rounds or whatever. When it's ball striking and it's, as you said it is, do you want to shrink it up a little bit? Go a little less detailed into the past and just look at last 3 or 4 events.
Yeah. Well, and especially this time of year. I mean, we've got essentially 5 weeks or 4 weeks of data really that is available to us. And because of as we touched on, the multi-course events, we've only got data on certain courses, and it's a small sample, but there's no real sense in going back to November and seeing how somebody was hitting the ball back then, because it's just such a wide gap. And this is that time of the year where yeah, I'll narrow it in pretty tight. Torrey gives us a good sample because it is such a driver heavy course like this is, that we can, kind of lean on. If you didn't have it there, it's going to be hard to trust you to bring it this week.
Okay. I mean, and how about like past success at this event? I know a lot of people compare
Yeah.
this also to the Players Championship. I saw a trend. I forget who tweeted it out the other day. 9 of the last 10 winners here have either been former major winners or Players Championship winners. So I mean, obviously, you got to focus on the guys that rise to the top in these premier events.
Yeah.
You know, are you focused in on success at this event and the Players Championship, or just the guys that play well at big events? Period.
I like course. I'm a course history guy on certain courses, and this is one of them. And I think there's part of it is the uniqueness that we talked about, where you're on 16 and 17, and you're not hitting shots with a quiet crowd. It's a different event, and I think there's something to that. So I'll lean on that more so than the players. I saw something today from Justin Ray, who tweeted about the correlation between this event and the U.S. Open, which wouldn't necessarily, because there's not really going to be much rough here, but you can very quickly get behind a cactus or into the desert, or some water or something like that. Where the ball striking aspect, there's a lot of crossover. He talked about with Webb Simpson being a U.S. Open champion, Barry Woodland a U.S. Open champion, Xander Schauffele has always played really well in this event and U.S. Opens. So it's, I really like that correlation. But again, it comes back to, my main focus this week is on the ball striking. And I've got a couple of different ways that I'm trying to get a little bit unique in the way that I look at that.
All right. So, I mean, you write great articles for Action Network, actionnetwork.com. And, your initial clicks this week, and I read your article as I always do, and you gravitated, and we're going to get like into each price tier, but your first name you talked about in your article this week was Hideki Matsuyama.
Yep.
Hideki's a 2-time winner at this event. He's obviously a major winner. And I love that you brought him up to kick off your article, because like you, I tried to get away from Hideki, for so long with all the WDs, the DQ last year, all that stuff. I mean, he burned me so many times.
Yeah.
But an event that course history matters, ball striking, big game player, how this guy's odds and DraftKings, he's at, I believe, 9,100 on DraftKings.
94. Yep.
9,400 on DraftKings. His ownership percentage, he's the first person below a 15% projection on Fantasy National for this event. Nothing seems to be catching up with the way Hideki plays. And is it because people are still worried about being burned by him so long ago? Because I love Hideki this week. He was one of my first bets this week. He's going to be in a boatload of my lineups. And I don't see why no one else is moving on and getting back on the Hideki train here on this tour.
Yeah, I think he has a stigma about him, and really, it's been there for a while. He's got a withdrawal from this exact event from a handful of years ago, where he was one of the most popular players in the field, if I remember correctly.
And champion at that point, I believe.
Yeah, and so he and I was on him. I think I was on him for 3 withdrawals and the disqualification last year. I was on him all 4 of those weeks. So, take my writing him up as a grain of salt. Could be a terrible thing ahead of us. But, we have seen in this event that ball striking is what matters the most. And guys that, we wouldn't normally look at in weeks where you need to be a good putter, or can get around this course and can win. Tony Finau has been there a couple of years. Hideki Matsuyama, Gary Woodland is not known for his putting game by any means. Webb Simpson has had his own putting issues. So, I'm looking for guys like him, and it ended up that he opened up at 40-1 on Bet365, and that was perfect, because that's the you get the quality of a player like Hideki Matsuyama, and you get the odds of, if he has it, he has the chance to win, and that's what you're betting on. And that's what I'll go for in DraftKings too. Like you said, he's projected for low ownership. He makes for a great play to get away from some of the chalkier zones there.
Well, so first off, just to give you a little background on me, I feel ownership percentage in DraftKings and fantasy golf is one of the most overrated, not overrated, over talked about. Everybody always talks about, well, this guy's going to be owned, so let's pivot. And I believe if you love a golfer in an event and you think he's got a real high upside to win the event, you still put him in your lineups. And too many people pivot off of that to be different. I've got other ways to be different. And that goes to the top of this board. There are so many great golfers on this event that I think ownership this week, you're not going to have that one golfer that's 28% owned, 29% owned, as you would have the last few weeks of weaker fields. So looking at this top of the board, the top priced guys, Rahm, Rory, defending champion Scotty Scheffler, Finau, who you've mentioned, Xander, they all have very small odds to win, or not great odds to win. How do you differentiate between which golfers here? I mean, because in my opinion, you could pick any two golfers to bet and any two golfers to anchor lineup, and you can't go wrong with these names. I mean, every single one of them could win this event.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I will be kind of on the opposite end of you, it sounds like a little bit, because I do look at ownership just as much as anything else, especially an event like this where there is so little to separate people. Naturally, with DFS, what we find is that there's a lot of groupthink, and it's become better and better over the years for sure. But people will start to congregate to kind of the same builds, the same players, things like that. So I will use ownership in a week like this to separate because obviously I think everyone would put Rory and Jon Rahm 1-2 in some fashion. You certainly can make the argument for Scheffler. Obviously, he won this event last year, but he hasn't shown to start the year what those other two have, and no one has. No, they are playing on a whole nother scale. So then you get down into Finau and Schauffele and Homa, who just won. Trying to separate those 6 players is a really tough task to do because they all have their own course history here. They've all been there to some extent, and so you got to try to figure out. And a lot of what I'll do is try to figure out, well, if I start here or if I go with what I'm going to try to do is to build 2 players from 9,000 and up, or call it 8,900 and up, because I do like Cam Young. I'm going to try to get 2 of those guys and see, what does it do to the bottom, and how can I shuffle between a couple of different combinations to get the right pieces at the bottom end. And I'll probably have some exposure to all of them. I'm an MME player, so I don't plan on Xing any of those 6 players out.
So, if you had to, I do 20, 25 lineups depending on the week. I try to keep in that 9K to, Rahm's 11 flat. I try to keep 2, maybe 3 of those guys as my main guys in this lineup. And, I actually like some of the guys in the 9K better than the 10K just because, I don't know, I think you're going to get a little, like Hideki, you're going to get a little bit better value there out of him. If you're going to take the 5 guys 10K and above, if you're just going to single out one guy, you can only play one guy. Which guy are you going to play this week in that range?
I think I'm going to play Rahm.
Okay.
I think I'm going to start lineups with Rahm. Let other people get cute if they want to. We saw that even in an off week where he started really slow and was right there about to miss the cut at Torrey Pines the last time we saw him, that he can ramp it up and be right there in the final group in position to win. And this is an event that he should win at some point in his career. It sets up perfectly for his game.
When I was having my most DFS success, I got laughed at on this show by my former co-host Jason because I said it's a very easy philosophy. Play Jon Rahm and the winner every single week, and you're going to make a lot of money. And it pretty much turned into a real. I don't know why I got off of that, and I've gotten back on that this year. And again, for some reason, I'm having a lot of success again.
Yeah, there you go.
Play John Rahm in the winner every week, and I'm glad you said that because that is the one guy that I will not, get away from. He might not be in 60 or 70% of my lineup, but he's going to
Right.
be quite a bit there. I want to go into this 9K range because this is kind of where I do get into ownership percentage a little bit because Colin Morikawa is a guy you're hearing a lot of people talk about. Obviously, he's
Yep.
played really well the last couple events. He's teed it up. Right now on Fantasy National, which it's still too early to really judge ownership percentage too much, but he's the second highest projected owned guy. And I like Colin Morikawa. I have an outright bet on him. Oh, I have two full units on him to win this event. But I also feel like his big picture over the last maybe 6 months of golf has been inconsistent enough where his floor is a lot like the floor to ceiling range is pretty wide for Colin.
Hmm.
So Colin at 18-20% with that wide range makes me want to play him a lot less than someone like John Rahm who might be 17%. But what's he going to do? Worst he's going to do is 10th place, might win the event.
Right.
I'm on Colin Morikawa this week because I know a lot of people are jumping all over Colin this week, and rightfully so. But I still have that little bit of doubt in my mind about Colin.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's understandable. I have not bet him, but I fully understand it. I think this is a week where his weaknesses are, less of a factor. We've already touched on the putting and a little bit about the around the green not being as big of a factor. That's those are two weaknesses of his game, and I was interested to see how he bounced back from that collapse at the Tournament of Champions, and he was right back doing exactly what we expect from him in terms of ball striking. And I can't remember if he finished T3, something like that, ultimately at Torrey Pines, but he was right there till the end. So I think it is a great price. And the thing with Colin, and I think what makes him maybe a really good GPP play, depending on how ownership shakes out, I guess a little bit. But his ceiling is that win. When he brings his putter, he is almost always right there for the victory, and that's something that it's Colin. Homa is one of those guys that either he's there for the win or he's finishing 40th. I don't mind that wide range in DFS,
Right.
because if it's not there, you're playing to win, first place, I guess is how I always look at it. And so I want the guys that have that ceiling to win, even if that floor is, a miscut or T50 or whatever it might be, especially as you drop down lower. And we get into the 8Ks and things like that. I want that ceiling to be as high as possible, regardless of what that floor may be. And that's also why, as we talked about to start out, Hideki. He has some withdrawal risk. I mean, Alexander has probably some withdrawal risk in terms of his back. But, if that's going to keep some people off of him, I know that if I get 4 rounds out of him, that ceiling is that win. And that's what can separate you, especially in GPP, large field contests.
For as bad as Colin Morikawa has been as a putter, his last 2 events, he's gained strokes putting. The Century and his last time he teed it up there with his 3rd place finish. So if his putter's hot, I mean, I would love. I might actually find a way to one of these outrights I got. Maybe it'll be Colin to parlay it with an Eagles Super Bowl victory. I don't know. I got to find one golfer that I like this week. Parlay with the Eagles. That's Brian BK Brian Kirshner. He always tells me to parlay a golfer with the Eagles.
Yeah, there you go. Do it. Take the short odds of Rahm, and then that way you can get him boosted up a little bit.
There you go. I like that. All right. So one other name I do like in the 9K range, I'd love to get your thoughts on. Another guy, I mean, ownership wise, it's not a major concern at this point. I love guys that finish in the top 5 in an event the previous year, and that's Patrick Cantlay, finished 2nd here last year. He's another guy like Hideki that he doesn't get the fanfare that John Rahm or Rory McIlroy get, but the dude's a monster. I mean, he scores a hell of a lot of points for DraftKings purposes, and this is an event that for sure. And I kind of like him a lot this week. What are your thoughts on Patrick?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got every reason to like him this week. He was right there. He was in the playoff last year. He has shown that he can contend any given week. He is one that actually, when I was hearing the players comp, he was the one that kind of made me squirm a little bit because I have no interest in playing Patrick Cantlay in Florida at any time for whatever reason. He just does not show up in that part of the country. But that is not the case this week because he's shown it time and again that he can be right there. I think if it came down to him, I probably am going to be a little bit lighter on him. And I think part of that is just going to be some game theory stuff, probably, that I'll go up to Justin Thomas, who I think is a very similar player in terms of they are two of the best iron players in the world when their game is on. And, right now I'm seeing about half the ownership to on about 10%, 10 or 11% on Thomas versus the around 20 on Morikawa or Cantlay. And I don't think, that you can say that either of those guys are going to beat Thomas 2 times out of 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those are the types of things that I kind of look at and think about. But
No fear with Justin Thomas. I mean, he hasn't been a bad golfer lately, but he hasn't been Justin Thomas lately. Maybe that's why the ownership's coming down
for sure,
on him.
for sure, yeah.
The first thought of me was, again, when are you ever going to get Justin Thomas at 9,800 in a field? Very rarely, or Patrick Cantlay at 95. That's what the great thing of these deep fields. It makes you really think of which elite golfer to play. But Justin Thomas is a 10-5, 10-7 guy some weeks, and you're getting him at 800. But then I think about in an elite field like this, has he been sharp enough to be worth the risk this week?
Yeah, no, that's fair. He did not look great down I guess it was the final 2 rounds really at Torrey Pines. He just didn't really have it. But he's somebody that I just have enough trust in terms of his game and his ability that when we talk ball striking, I think he is one that I can trust can bounce back any given week. And there are a couple in the 8K that don't have it, and I don't really have that same trust in them. And so that's where I'll have some exposure and take my chance that maybe he brings it this week, and he's automatically somebody that gets me different from the rest of the field.
No, I mean, I always leave whenever I have a guest on this show. I always leave a couple spots open, for me to add players that JT add. I don't know. Maybe he got added to my player pool. We'll see when I build lineups tomorrow night. Another name you mentioned him already. We're dropping right down to this 8K range because you mentioned you like a lot, and that's Cam Young this week. He was in my maybe, not my for sure. So what is it about Cam Young? I mean, last 36, he's what? I think he's number 1 in the field off the tee. He's a good ball striker. He scores a lot of birdies. He does a lot of things really well.
Right. Yep. The only knock on him is that he's coming from the Saudi International, and people are going to talk about that and create narratives and try to, determine how he's going to handle jet lag. And I try to avoid that type of stuff altogether and just take the player that I know who they are and know what they do well and back them. So I grabbed him when DraftKings updated. He was 45-1, which is just far too long of a number for a player of his skill set. And I think it's dropped down to 30 now. But he's somebody, again, that, off the tee, ball striking, we can trust to be right there with any of the elites in the field. He's $8,900. He just is a perfect fit for what I'm looking for this week. And so I'll take my chances that he gets a good night's rest and is ready to go.
Yeah, and when I first started a year or two ago, I talked all the time about the jet lag, and then I realized it's not as big of a deal as some people make it out to be at all.
Yep.
Another name you wrote about in your article from Monday was Sam Burns. He's at 8,600. He's another guy that kind of like Hideki, maybe not so much now about Max Homa, but maybe last year Max Homa, that just doesn't get the credit that he deserves for the kind of golfer he is. I mean, $8,600 for Sam Burns. I mean, I think I've paid a lot more than that for Sam Burns before, and I probably would have paid more than that for Sam Burns this week. Sam Burns can win this event.
He can. He absolutely can. I'm actually on the fence with him now. I don't like necessarily what I've seen from him kind of to start the year. He did bounce back at Amex, which was nice. So maybe that's got him trending in the right direction. I'm going to play a little bit of the ownership game on him and see kind of where that heads, because on the surface, this place should be good for him. His biggest concern is that he can get a little bit loose off the tee, and you can't do that here. And that maybe that's the reason that he's got 3 missed cuts and 4 trips. I think, if I remember off the top of my head correctly, I think his best finish is a T22. But he's got 4 wins. He has 4 wins in the last 2 years. What I wrote about him on the betting side was he is in the range where you've got some of the guys that really haven't won, and he didn't belong in that tier from a betting perspective. I'm going to have, because of the way I want to build, I'm going to have trouble getting to Spieth, Burns, Theegala, even down to the Montgomery range, because I want to jam at least 2 of those top end guys. It's going to be hard for me to get a lot of exposure in this range. So he may be a casualty more of the build than the skill set, but he's somebody I'll be worried about if I end up having to fade him.
Yeah, you mentioned Montgomery. And I was so hyped and so ready for a Taylor Montgomery season, yet now all of a sudden in a field like this, I feel like maybe he's even overpriced at this point, the way he's played the last couple of weeks. It's like an easy fade for me at this point. I'd rather go to Tyrell Hatton $100 more, and
right.
50, I bet Hatton to win this event at 50-1. I mean, he played pretty well on the across the pond this year already. And he's got a lot of high risk, high reward, very volatile player, but a guy that I think you get better value out of, both betting and DFS wise, than Montgomery at $100 cheaper.
Yeah, absolutely. And Montgomery's done so much of his work with the putter that it's a little harder to back him in a week where you have to have the ball striking that he really hasn't necessarily brought week to week. I mean, he's got a bunch of great finishes, but a lot of it has been ridden by a statistically historical type of stretch with his putter. So I feel pretty comfortable, at least on the front end, being able to get to a fade on him.
All right, the name, we talked about Colin Morikawa getting a lot of hype and love. Another former champion in the field here at the bottom of the 8K range. It's getting a lot of talk, and that's Ricky Fowler. If any event was going to be the event he wins to get back to where he was, and when I first saw the odds drop, and we're talking, when did the odds drop? Like Sunday evening or something like that for this event?
Yeah,
I'm all over it. I dropped a bet on Fowler like that, and now I'm thinking, man, that might have been a waste of right there. Because I don't know if this deep of a field is the field to fix, your ways and get back into the winning. Maybe it's a way to get back into a top 20 bet or whatever, a top 40. But this, I'm doubting my Ricky Fowler, thoughts from Sunday evening when I was initially thinking about this.
Hey, but it's already in. It's already in. So if he's there on Sunday, you'll be happy to sweat it. So
yeah, I would never back out of bet anymore. Never anymore. I've already learned. Little side note. So last year, I forget which event was it. It was Homa versus Finau in the playoffs, and Homa won. Which event was that? I forget.
That was Genesis, wasn't it?
Was it Genesis? Yeah, because I had an outright on Homa.
Yes.
And Homa put his first shot of the playoff up against a tree, so I cashed out. Yeah. And then Finau screwed up even worse, so Homa went on and won. So I only got about half of my bet on that one.
I've got one of those stories from.
Does that count as an outright hit still? Because it's something
yes,
to say
yes, absolutely, yes. We are. You get a nice chunk of money out of it, and just hedged a little bit. That's all right.
Yeah, that's all it is. But anyway, what are your thoughts on Fowler there this week? Do you think that this is too tough of a field for him to fix his, No,
I mean he's mid-price. He's mid-price. He has shown he was really impressive at Torrey Pines, and he has shown in a short sample that maybe it's back. Maybe it's not, but maybe it's back. It's with Fowler, I'd argue he's a little overpriced, and he's from a betting market, that was kind of my argument when I wrote up Sam Burns is Fowler was 60, Sam Burns was 55. Sam Burns has won 4 times in the last 2 years. Fowler hasn't won since whenever. I think it might even have been this event. But from a DFS perspective, yeah, I'm definitely in. He can score when he gets things going and plays like he's been playing over the last several weeks. He is showing that he can still be a top talent. You always pay a little bit of a premium because of his name. People are going to roster him. People are going to bet him. The odds makers aren't going to make his number what they probably should be. But he makes a lot of sense and seems to be trending in the right direction. And that's, all you can really ask for heading into the 5th tournament of the year. So,
yeah, absolutely. So into the 7K range here. I mean, there's a lot of names. And when you do lineups, I mean, you got to use some of these names. So some of them stick out sometimes and you end up placing some bets. I don't know why we place so many bets on long shots, because time and time again, long shots do not win deep fields like this, but we always do it. But 2 names at the top of the 7K range that I like, mostly because their recent form has been great, and that's Jason Day and Keegan Bradley. Jason Day seems kind of like Ricky Fowler, like he's starting to find something again, starting to find some of his old form. And Keegan's always been a good golfer, he just couldn't putt. Now all of a sudden he's putting really well by his standards.
right.
Either those 2 guys this week or
yeah, absolutely. I bet Keegan when they first put the odds out. I guess it was over Torrey Pines weekend that they had some players odds up, and he was at 130 to 1. So I jumped on that and just took it. And if he's there, I'll have some options over the weekend. But he's the exact type of player that I am not scared of at all this week. I know that what he's going to do tee to green. We'll find out what he brings with the putter. But yeah, he's been doing a lot better with the putter lately. And Jason Day has been showing good form too. So, I think you can go right to both of those guys and feel pretty comfortable that, the form that they've shown early in the year is that they've got their ball striking with them, and they're, ready for an event like this. And, while we all kind of, I think, expect a top end player to win, there's going to be, some of those guys kind of in this middle tier that are right there over the weekend. This is one of the events where, coming from 4 or 5 behind and just catching fire over the final round, historically has, produced a bunch of different winners. So while it's something that is probably going to cater towards the top end, it's not like Torrey Pines where there's really no danger. There's a lot of places that people can get in trouble, and we can see a leaderboard flip. And so you want to have some exposure to some guys that know how to score and know how to strike the ball around the course.
And how about any of these other names in this upper 7K? Do any of them stick out to you? You got Horschel, Corey Connors always gets a lot of ownership love, on the DraftKings side of things. Same as Power, KH Lee, a guy that I think is a totally different golfer than he was the last couple of years. Any of these names stick out to you?
Yeah, I'm going to have Connors for the same reason that I have Keegan there, but I look at them as essentially the same type of player. Connors hasn't been quite as elite here lately with his ball striking, but that's his game is ball striking off the tee and on approach. Alex Noren is a name that I really like, that I think he'll get lost a little bit in the shuffle maybe, just because he's been over in Europe a good bit, but he's had a couple of nice finishes and really had, he used to be a top 20 player in the world, and then really just kind of fell off the map a little bit. So he's the type of player that I like. I always love KH Lee. You're talking right up my alley when you talk about him. So yeah, there's some good names in this range. Some of the guys that I've kind of marked out early. Power, I like him better when there's a little bit more wedge involved in the game, like last week. Same for Hoagie. And then McNeely, I don't know if it was a real withdrawal last week, if he really had a shoulder injury or if he was just tired of the slog. But he's habitually overpriced, and I'll just go away from there this week and look at a couple of other names that I think, like we said, feel like have a little more of a ceiling.
Yeah. I mean, I never thought I'd be excited to play KH Lee in a field this deep. Like, he was my go-to guy at the Barracuda Open or,
Yeah.
or whatever. And now I kind of look for him at a deep event. I'm like, where is he on this board?
Yeah.
Should I get invested in KH Lee? And I love it. Some names at the bottom end I hear a lot of people talking about. You already mentioned Gary Woodland, guy that's won a U.S. Open, guy that plays inconsistent golf, but he seems to play really well at the toughest tournaments. So Woodland and Poston, Brendan Steele's got really good, results at this event in the past, has good numbers. Any of these bottom end names, Lucas Herbert, Garrett Higos, all of a sudden starting maybe that swing helping them out. There's a lot of interesting names down here to balance out the playing of Rory, or Rahm or whoever these JT guys at the top that you're going to play.
Yeah, and I expect him to be popular, but Keith Mitchell is going to be one of the first names that I click. He's there at 7,400. So the stat that I'm using to be a little bit different this week is total driving, which is a PGA stat. It's just a combination of a player's rank with driving distance and with accuracy off the tee, both of which I think are important this week. He is first on tour in that metric this season, which I kind of waffle as to whether or not that's really important with the lack of stars playing in the fall. But last season, he was second on tour behind Rahm. So he is a player that I can, really trust and get behind off the tee. He showed us great form last week, even though it's a completely different completely different setup and course. Mitchell is going to be one of my favorite plays down in this range. You mentioned Poston. I love what I've seen out of him. He's the guy that is always going to bring the putter, but he's been showing a lot more consistency with his ball striking. And if he can do that, he's another guy that can get hot enough with the putter to be there for, probably not a win, but a top 15 type of finish, which is what'll help you win a GPP in this price range.
Okay. Something, I mentioned my, distaste for people purposely, no offense that you use it still ownership percentage. That's always been my thing, not pivoting when I love a guy. Pivot different times, but not then. Something new I've been trying out the last couple of weeks, and I need a good 5-8 weeks to really see if this philosophy really works, is the bottom end guys. If you do 20 lineups, just say, how many people are you trying to stick to in your player pool?
I get that question a lot, and it varies week to week for me, because it depends on the level of field. Like, I'm not afraid to, a couple years ago in the Amex, it was Rahm and a bunch of nobodies. I'm not afraid to press the lock button on Rahm and just narrow in that I'm trying to find 5 other players. So it's, I would say 20 lineups. I'm probably in the 30 to 35 range in terms of the number of players, which is more than I think most people keep in a pool. But I do spread out, and I'm happy to, I'll do 150 lineups, I'm making sure that I have at least 5% of everyone in my pool. But I like to be able to, kind of put those different combinations in golf, especially. I'm actually a single entry in other sports. So
I've only been doing this since the pandemic. Like, I started golf writing for a website, because nothing else to write about. It was the first sport back. And I was trained by the people I started with. You have 20 lineups, you need 19, 20, 21 names max, or you're stretching yourself too thin. The last 3 weeks here now, I've been stretching out. Yeah, my top 3 or 4 guys, I'm going heavier than ever before, which when Will Zalatoris misses the cut and you've got him in 80% of your lineups, it kind of kills you. But those guys from 7,100 to 6,500, that if you only have 18 guys, you're clicking a guy like Hayden Buckley 5 times or Adam Hadwin 6 times when you probably shouldn't be. So I've been stretching it out. Last week I had 30 names. Right now, without adding any of the names you might have convinced me, I got 32 names on my probable list right now. That way I'm playing only one Buckley, only one maybe Johnny Vegas this week, who's a guy that's kind of intriguing to me. it's giving you more creative lineups, but keeping to the core. And it's something that I don't know if it's going to work out for me long term, but I got to give it a little bit of a time before I, go back to what I was told was the only way to do it, which is having a tight player pool.
Right. Yeah, and I like to pair, or maybe even do 3 or 4 as a core, and then just kind of toggle those last 2 or 3 pieces around different players that I like, and so that's how I end up with a little bit more of a player pool. But really, I'm still consolidated on what I see as kind of my main 3 plays. I'm just trying to find the right combination of other pieces, and that's what it sounds like you do as well.
I started it like 2 weeks ago, and my friend Jason was making fun of me. I call it my tier system. Tier 1 is my core. It's like if I'm in 20 lineups, they're getting 12, 14 clicks.
Yeah.
Tier 2 is those guys in that 5 to 6, 7 range, and then the bottom, which it's 1 or 2 clicks, it's giving you more variety of lineups. You might not cash 18 to 20 lineups, but you have a better chance of getting to the top or maybe winning a GPP by doing that. And that's where, that's why I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 9 names in the 6K written down as maybe plays this week because I'm trying to get creative. And, if one of them has a good finish, you're looking pretty good.
Yeah, and that's the way I like to play it too, is that if I hit my core right, then I'm going to have a bunch of lineups in that top half of a contest, and then I'm just looking for those ancillary pieces to be the right combination that given week to have that big hit. That's how I play it too.
My morning show co-host will love the fact that you use the word ancillary because I use it all the time. Eagles and Phillies and Sixers about the ancillary pieces, and they think that they laugh at me that I use that word all the time.
Good.
Good. Yeah.
I'm glad I could back you on that.
At least somebody's backing me on that. All right. So, we talked this tournament here a lot. We've thrown a lot of names out there. Give me your favorite. If you had to put all eggs in the basket, put your most units bet, your most lineups clicked, who do you feel the most confident will come out and win this week?
That is a really good question. I think so I think my favorite play for right now, with everything considered, is probably Cam Young. I think we're going to see some people venture away from him. At 8,900, I think he has the best upside in terms of DraftKings scoring, price, ability to put other pieces around him and everything like that. That he's going to be probably my highest owned play by the end of the week.
Okay. Yeah, I can get behind that for sure. I'm still stuck because it's ownership is what's killing me. If I was just betting this week, I really would feel very confident that Patrick Cantlay would be my number 1 play. I just think that his price is good and everything. Just if he's in that 20% range, I just don't know how many clicks he gets. If Hideki holds true to his form, I was looking at something earlier today. Let me see if I can pull it up really fast. I think it's been like 7 events since he's been over 13% owned in a field in a regular GPP.
Yeah.
Whereas Farmers 7.4, Sony Open 11.9, Century 12.2, Houston Open 8.3, 6.2. So I just don't know how I don't lap the field in usage on Hideki this week.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think you can get very comfortable by having 20 or 30% minimum and being 2 to 3x on the field. And again, we talked about a player that has the upside and course fit, course knowledge, all of that that you want in a week like this. I love that as a
I kind of feel like even if he stays at that 13% or less, that even if he finishes 8th or 10th in this event, that I'm getting a great return on my investment if he's in 50% of my lineup this week. So
yeah, all right, absolutely.
Outside of your outrights, do you do much on the top 20s or placement betting or anything like that?
I don't do a ton of it. You mentioned Hayden Buckley. He's who I wrote up in our action staff picks this week as a top 20 pick. You can get him at 5-1 over on BetMGM. BetMGM pays all ties in full, which is where I do all my placement bettings when I do that. But he is, I kind of mentioned the total driving and the ball striking aspect. Each of the last year, he was in the top 10 in both of those metrics. DraftKings, he is going to be probably one of my highest owned in the low range because he's so cheap. He's shown great form. I think he's an up and comer that, all of us that are, kind of entrenched in this know the name. But when we get, to weeks like this, you get some more casual players and things like that. You're not going to get as many people with knowledge of a Hayden Buckley, but he is one of my favorite plays this week and somebody that I'll have in a finished position. I also like Brian Harmon for that aspect. And you mentioned Johnny Vegas. Vegas is another one of my favorites down there.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like those. I do like I got again, I don't stretch to multiple sports books. I'm too busy to keep track of them all with everything else going on in life. But I bet Keegan Bradley top 20 and JT Poston top 20. It was 250 and 360. I thought they were good enough numbers because I just don't see how will they win or not? I don't know. But I just don't see how they don't finish in the top 20. And I thought that was pretty easy money for the most part with those two guys. So I did those. I was hoping you said you bet a lot on that stuff because I have awful success at placement. I literally I bet 4 or 5 placement bets a week. I've hit, so what are we in our 5th week, 6th week? I got about 30, 32 placement bets this year. I think I've hit 3 of them.
Yeah.
So I'm basically breaking even on my outrights because my outrights are covering my losses in the top 20 right now.
Yeah, I have gone mostly to outrights. I do. I've got a couple of books that offer me each ways, and I'll do that for the longer odds type of guys. But yeah, it's it all sounds like easy money on the front end of a week, and then you get out there and somebody fires one out of bounds in the first 2 holes, and you realize that it's a little harder to hit top 20s and top 30s even than what it looks like to start things off. But it's all fun to sweat and chase.
Mm-hmm. All right, so real quick, you're down there in Virginia. You're a Washington Commanders fan, not an Eagles fan. Before I let you off, I could not have this show without asking you, what are your thoughts on the Super Bowl? And are your hated Eagles, my Eagles, are they going to beat the Chiefs this weekend?
I do think they beat the Chiefs. I think they're the better team. I just think all around they're the better team. But it's, I have not made any bets or anything like that, or even looked at DraftKings or, trying to figure that out. It's always tough to go against a guy like Mahomes who can just make everybody else around. I mean, what he's doing with the group of wide receivers and running backs that he has, outside of Kelsey, there's just nothing there. And he continually, puts up the numbers and keeps them in the game week after week. So that's, that'll be what it comes down to, and seeing if I expect they're going to try to make Hurts beat them through the air if they can. That was probably the Niners game plan too, and they couldn't even force them to have to do that. So I think the Eagles are a better team, and that's where putting my heart aside, I would put my money.
It's so hard if you're an NFC East fan to root for any of the other teams in the NFC East ever.
Right.
It's so difficult. I will say I did make one bet so far that's been locked in, and that is Hassan Reddick as MVP. It opened at like 65 to 1. It's down to like 35 to 1. The guy is second in the league in sacks. He's should have been one of the finalists for Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know why he wasn't. He might be the first defensive lineman since Von Miller to win MVP in a Super Bowl, and I would not be surprised if he gets a couple sacks on Patrick Mahomes, and I'll be cashing that. I forget what I got him at. He's 35 to 1 now, but I got him a little higher than that. But yeah, that's the bet right now for me.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna wrap up Fairway to Heaven right here again on the DSM Media Network. Again, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. If you watch this on replay, which I know a lot of people do, drop your questions. I will get back to each and every one of them, whether they're on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. I greatly appreciate that. Turn the notifications on because we will be live, as we always are, in the morning for Trending in the AM. I am Phil Safe. Again, Chris Murphy from Action Network. Tell everybody where they can find you outside of your Twitter handle there. Anything else that you got going
Yeah.
on?
Yeah, so Action Network, and this is really the start of things for me this week. I do some picks and pre-tournament previews and bets, things of that nature. But my main articles are between rounds. After each round, second and third rounds, I'll be doing a preview article going into the next round with current odds, strokes gained data, all of that good stuff. If you play the showdown aspect, I try to break down a lot of that stuff to kind of find some of the guys that may be in position to go low or to make a move on the leaderboard. So that's where you can find it, right at Action Network. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it because you know what? Showdowns are a very underrated aspect of fantasy golf.
It is.
I've probably made more money in showdowns than I've had in the GPPs that I've been playing for years now. Because if you really pay attention, watch a lot of golf like some of us do, you can really make a lot of money in showdowns. And
Yeah, absolutely.
your articles are part of the help right there.
Yeah, watch it and understand it, and know that if you're going from the first round to second round, just because a guy shot 5 over the day before doesn't mean you should not consider him at all. But he'll get low ownership. That's where
You do a lot of write up real quick. I know we were going to cut the show off there. Something that I have you just nailed something that I've been doing and having a lot. I've won a lot of money in round 2s and 3s of showdowns because I stick to my core player pool.
Yep.
Before round 2, even if a golfer is 5 over or whatever, I stick to it. I don't change it because if you were confident in Cam Young or Keegan Bradley or any of these guys, Hayden Buckley, just because they had a bad round 1 does not mean it actually means they're probably better round 2, and it means their ownership's going to drop massively round 2, and that's how you can set yourself apart from everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. If you like somebody to start the week, 18 holes shouldn't change that opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're going to wrap up Fairway to Heaven right here again. Like I said, everybody have a great night. Again, if you got notifications on, you'll be notified when we're live tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. for Trending in the AM. Again, for Chris Murphy, I am Phil Stifel. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you next week.